So, all right, let's get to this story. So, Gen Z apparently has an issue with Sex in the City. When I read this, I rolled my eyes and cackled so damn hard. It's like I can't with Gen Z. Oh my god. Oh, the sensitivity for this generation. I can't. But anyway, so I don't know if y'all know this, but after years, or should I say decades, of well, Sex and the City has always been on HBO. It's also been on HBO Max, and now it's Max. HBO's always been there for a minute. I believe this month it went to Netflix. So now all of a sudden, since everybody got a Netflix account, now everybody feels since it's this universal streaming service, now we can sit up here and watch Sex in the City, which defeats the purpose. Like, so do I need these other streaming services? Do I need HBO Max? Do I need all these other streaming services? Because quiet as it's kept, Netflix is acquiring everybody else's stuff, and I get to just see it on there. So I feel like I don't even need Netflix. I mean, Netflix. Netflix got everything. So I don't feel like I need HBO Max, but then I do, because with The Last of Us new season come out and White Lotus and all those other shows, I'm going to need first dibs on those shows. But yeah, all 6 seasons of Sex and the City. I don't even know if the movies are up there. They don't have it Just Like That, because Just Like That's not a good show. But anyway, so it says, though Sex and the City has been on HBO for decades, the show is now on Netflix. And so, a wider audience can actually watch it. One of those audiences includes Gen Z, whose anticipated reaction to the show has dominated online discourse for 2 weeks. How could the most diverse generation on record identify with Carrie, Charlotte, Samantha, and Miranda, 4 wealthy white women? Are they really wealthy? Because with Carrie's job as an advice columnist, sex advice, that she was on relationships, but she was the most flawed out of all of them with their relationship. But that was the contrast of the show. The whole point of watching Sex in the City was that Carrie wasn't perfect. She was actually relatable in a lot of situations. And, to this day, I still haven't forgiven how she treated Aiden in season 3. I'm still mad at her over that. Now, I don't know how they worked everything out in that season and Just Like That, the recent one, because I remember Aiden came back to the show. I've kind of stepped away from him Just Like That. Like, I watched half of the second season, but I haven't come back to it. So I really don't know I'm sure they probably did work things out and they came to a closure or whatever, because they're older now. But I have not kept up with it Just Like that. So I've kept up. Like, Sex in the City is sort of my thing. And when I was younger in the 90s, I didn't get a lot of the stuff that was going on with Sex in the City either. But now that I'm older and I have a little more mileage under my belt, and I've done the relationships and had lots of sex, especially living in New York and stuff, I kind of understand the nuances and the things that the women were going through on the show. So I get it now. Then I didn't. But now that I'm older and like I said, got a little mileage, I get some of the stuff now. And yeah, don't get me wrong, some of the stuff on there is cringe. The episode about bisexuals, some of the topics and stuff that they've told about, yes, a lot of it is outdated and cringe. Or the one where, what was it, that Carrie goes to a party and she meets this young kid, a much younger guy, he was in his 20s, and then he was making out with a girl and a dude and all this other stuff at a party. And that episode did kind of cringe me out. And I think that's the same episode, the bisexual episode. And look, they're not the only ones that have kind of cringed me out with bisexuality conversations. Insecure, not that long ago, did an episode on that too. And I hated the way they handled the bisexuality thing. But it opens the gate of the conversation of how women feel when it comes to bisexuality. Because I'll even say, and I'll get to the rest of the time in a minute, because I really it's funny how this falls into this. I literally had a conversation with a friend of mine, a girl that I used to work with years ago, hit me up in the comments and asked me, is it wrong for her because she said that I won't date a guy who is bisexual? Is it wrong for her to feel that way? I don't know how to answer that. If y'all got a better answer for me in the comments, let me know. But the best way I could answer it, I was like, well, some people will find that hypocritical because she's dated women. Now, and I remember when I used to hang out with her, when we went to Pride and stuff, and she was hanging out with her girlfriend at the time, who we used to call Little Bit because she was short Puerto Rican girl, and they used to go at it. It's them age when you were one of them femme lesbians or femme girls who hang out with the eight with what they call studs now, but we used to call them back in the day. We used to call them AGs, which would be like the aggressive type girls, where they masculine appearing. But I said it was like, but some people will call it hypocritical because it's like, you've been with men, but you also dated women, but then you have a problem with it's okay for you as a girl to date a girl and be in a relationship with a guy, but you wouldn't date a guy who's been with a guy, but also dates girls. But then she told me a story about how she was dating this guy and she found, and I didn't even know this because I don't have a smart TV. I have a Roku. I did not know that the smart TVs show basically what you've been watching, your history and stuff. Apparently, he had some trans porn on her TV, and he didn't know that she knew. So she brought that up and was like, so it could be this situation of like her not trusting, or it could be a trust situation. I don't know. That's just something you got to work out with your doctor, your therapist, your priest, or whatever. But it was just like, I just didn't know how to answer that question. So it's just like any women out there, what is it? I would love to know it just in general. What is it about bisexuals or whatever the case is, or male bisexuals that you have a problem with? Do y'all think like because I guess maybe men are dogs. So you feel like, they won't commit strictly to you, or you thinking that, okay, so I'm with you, but I'm out here sleeping with other dudes or whatever. I also feel like it's all about communication. That if you are communicating with this significant other, you letting them know where you stand. That's like, oh no, when I'm with you only. I'm not out here sleeping with Tom, Dick, and Harry while I'm in a relationship with you as a female. I'm committed directly to you. Now, if we break up and I go over here to and I happen to fall in love with somebody that's a guy, then I'll do that. But this is not my whole situation. This is not how I'm not somebody that's just out here just having sex with, and I think that's what I think a lot of people think as well, is that they think because you're bisexual that you're out here just being a hoe. And it's like anybody could be a hoe. Straight people are hoes, gay people are hoes, it doesn't matter. So let's not all just lump everybody in a category. So I know that was a lie, but that kind of just fell into the whole bisexual thing with Sex and the City. But also, they also said that perhaps even more personally, how could a group of young people having less sex than their parents and grandparents respond to a show that revolves around the aforementioned character sexcapades and romantic dalliances? The answer is exactly how you would expect. At least that's the case when it comes to one writer who wrote about her grievances with the show in The Independent. Before we go further, it's worth noting that Sex and the City's most devout fans would admit that there are plenty of cringe throughout the show's 6th season. I've said that. Carrie's declaring that bisexuality is a layover on the way to gay town. A lot of people believe that. Samantha using derogatory slurs while fighting with black trans sex workers. And Miranda's near constant classism. Yeah, there was a lot of that. And don't get me started on Charlotte. In other words, the Sex and the City girls aren't necessarily the best people. They're greedy, promiscuous, and in Carrie's case, deeply self-indulgent, which is why I think a lot of people had a problem with And Just Like That, because they were all those things at that time. But you expect now, because we're in a whole new era, that these girls have just completely evolved, where they're just, they have all these type of different diverse group of friends and stuff. You could have still kept them the way they were and just evolved slightly, but how do they fit in this new world of wokeism and how people who are, LGBT, black, women, that sort of thing. Anybody that's a part of a marginalized group have evolved and elevated since network television always had white people at the forefront of everything. So you could have them trying to see how they fit in with that, but I don't even think their writers are diverse enough. And it says that when the writer points out the irony of Carrie being a sex columnist with rigid views about sexuality, or Charlotte's toxic ideas about dating, one phrase comes to mind, duh. And that's why I said, like, it just goes to show that I feel like maybe what the issue is that a lot of Gen Z, and this is why I said before, when Sex and the City first came out, I didn't have enough life experience under my belt to even understand what it was that these women were going through, who were in their 30s. And I was still in school, going through puberty and all these other things and on my way to becoming an adult. So I didn't understand a lot of the stuff that was going on in Sex and the City. Now I do. Because, like I said, I've had a little mileage under my belt. I feel like Gen Z should not be out here critiquing a show when, like they said, Gen Z is having less sex than their parents and grandparents. Or you haven't had enough lived-in experience to understand what these women are going through. Y'all are so fixated on, oh my God, that's inappropriate. That's not appropriate. They can't be saying that. Why would you say that sort of thing? We can't say those things in these days. I mean, at this time. Yeah, but back then we said it unapologetically. And yeah, it was cringe and it was wrong, but this was the conversation. Well, this is the stuff that we were having, we were talking about. These were the conversations. So you can't just come in and bash something from 30, what was it, 25 years ago that you aren't privy to understanding. You're critiquing a show that they can't go in and change the narrative. They're busy trying to do that now. And I feel like that's why, and Just Like That is suffering. Because they're a product of the Gen Zs. This is the byproduct of that, what they're trying to give y'all. But it also said, unlike Friends of the Office, which have their own problems when watched through a modern lens, there is not a single main character worth rooting for in Sex and the City. The article says, the bottom line is I can't enjoy a show that's supposed to be about female friendships when I have zero sympathy for the characters who aren't just terrible friends, but terrible people. I disagree. First of all, they're not terrible people. They're flawed. And I know this may be a shock to some of y'all, but as human beings, we're all flawed. Trust and believe. If y'all knew me personally, there'd be things about me that you would love, and there's things that you would probably dislike, and vice versa. We all have those issues. That's what makes us human. And to me, I think that started out with what I loved about Sex and the City is like they did some deplorable things on that show, but you rooted for some of them at the end of the day. You wanted Carrie to get out of her own way in regards of constantly taking big toxic ass back, that every time that she had a moment where she could be elevated to getting the love that she should have gotten, which she was getting from Aiden, she sabotaged that by going back to Big when he was married to Bridget Monahan, aka Tom Brady ex. It's like, you know what? When she went and fucked that up because Big was her Achilles heel. So we all have those moments where there's self-sabotage. This was rooted in reality. Even though the way y'all was living in New York wasn't realistic, especially Carrie. Because I don't know how you working doing a column and you could afford Jimmy Choo's and Bologna Blahniks and live on the Upper West Side. Like, that was unrealistic. Same thing with Friends. But we overlooked that. We overlooked it. And look, some of my friends that I know, they said they moved to New York because of Sex and the City. They even shot at the original XL, the one I was telling you about the other day, where I met Ari Gold and he signed my autograph. I mean, he signed my autograph. He signed his autograph on his Space Under the Sun CD, and it was the gay club that they had. Because apparently a lot of people these days got problems with unisex bathrooms. We didn't have that problem back in the day. We actually, the XL bathroom had a giant fish tank. Y'all remember the episode of Sex and the City where they went to the club and they had the big fish tank in the middle of the bathroom. And then it was like they had the stalls or whatever, which we all know everybody uses stalls due to booger sugar. Nobody actually went to the bathroom. Like they had the urinals or whatever, and then Samantha had a little sequence when she went in there. The guys at the urinal, there was like this little metal thing at the bottom where they have like some of the men's bathrooms. We have that little metal thing at the bottom, and they all just kind of just go and they pee or whatever, take the dicks out, go to the bathroom. Then you got the stalls on both sides, which the girls would use. Nobody had issues with unisex bathroom. Now it just seemed like everybody got an issue. I don't know where we went wrong. But anyway, I just say all this to say is it's like, I just don't understand what Gen Z is talking about. What, girl, y'all get on my nerves. So one person put a deeply unserious mind in regards to the whole I'm Gen Z watching Sex and the City for the first time. It's not just outdated, it's cringy. Using a GIF reaction because I'm a millennial, and they're showing Kristen Johnson, remember before she fell out the window? In that episode, she put, no one's fun anymore. Whatever happened to fun? Another person called, what is called the spirit of an age is something to which one cannot return. This spirit gradually dissipates due to the world's coming to an end. One would like to change today's world back to the spirit of 100 years or more. It cannot be done. And this is from The Way of the Samurai. And so it's just like another person put, please tell us what you think of Laverne and Shirley next. It's like, child. And then another person put Gen Z will never understand how iconic Samantha Jones is, SMH. But then there were some people said that, you know what, I am a millennial and I mean, I am a millennial, I am a Gen Zer, and I do like Samantha. Like there's some people out there, I'm not gonna lump all of Gen Z in somebody because I did read some comments that was like, you know what, I'm watching Sex and the City and I get it, I understand it. And some of them do relate to some of the characters. Some feel like they're Miranda, some feel like they're Charlotte, some people like they're Carrie or Samantha. And I'm not gonna say all Gen Z ain't out here having sex. Like a child. If you see some of them OnlyFans and them Twitters, y'all are having a lot more sex than y'all letting on. And yeah. So this is just, child. This is ridiculous. Then they also went and said Sex and the City would probably be aged better if the women were selfless and cognizant of others. But to me, that's boring. Another person put terrible people are fabulous to watch. They sure are. Part of the joy of Sex and the City is hate watching for the characters. I love Carrie because I hate how horrifying her thought process and decisions are, like crying about being the villain in Natasha's life. But it's like, girl, you were not a villain. It's like you brought this upon yourself. And said how being the villain in Natasha's life for treating Aiden the same way Big treated her. We don't need perfect characters to root for them. Absolutely. And we don't. So I'm gonna just leave it at that. I'm sure we got a lot of people commenting on this at the end. And to me, I just feel like, as someone who, and I will say this, I am currently rewatching Sex and the City on Max. And I'll say before, I do cringe at some of the storylines because they're indeed outdated. However, I'm sick and tired of newer generations criticizing a time they weren't privy to. Now, I also think that criticisms of Gen Z and how sensitive people have become in regards to hot button topics is exactly why. And just like that is a directionless, convoluted, hot ass mess. And quiet as it's kept, I do feel like if there was anybody that Gen Z would relate to out of all four girls, it'd be Charlotte, because y'all do be acting like a Charlotte. Charlotte was so goddamn uptight.